Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Issachah Savage, and I am honored to be your host for the evening. Welcome to Unplugged, Young Black Artists Speaking Out. The Coalition for African Americans in the Performing Arts, also known as CAAPA, have an exciting and informative panel discussion planned for you. I'm thrilled about this event and the panelists that are chosen to participate, as CAAPA is one of the few organizations providing a platform specifically for young artists of this generation to allow them to let their voices be heard amidst the great challenges in our world: COVID-19, civil unrest due to police brutality, inequity in the classical world of arts, and probably much more. We will come to understand not only how the panelists feel about these current events, but also how they are finding ways to cope and develop inspiration in the face of it all. I'm very excited to hear from these young artists. But first, I would like to introduce CAAPA's co-founder and chairperson, Ms. Pamela Simonson.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for being here with us this evening. I am so excited as my brother Victor and I started CAAPA many years ago to give back to the community. And our community is vibrant, it's talented, it's fierce. And so we are so grateful to have a panel of talented, fierce, and vibrant artists that I look forward to hearing from this evening. And I know not only are we going to learn from them, but we want to know as CAAPA how we can help you. So please stay in touch with us. Thank you for being here again. And I am so ready to hear what this next hour brings.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ky'Lend Adams, and I want to thank you for joining us for Unplugged Young Artists Virtual Panel, Pivoting After the Pandemic. I'm excited for the next hour and to be joined with three of the most amazing, talented artists and who will be talking to us about how they pivoted through the pandemic and after the pandemic in their specific art fields. First up, we have Airelle Thornhill, Josephe Matthews, and Mikiah Mitchell. Thank you all for joining us today and being a part of the next hour as we have a conversation about how you all took your art forms and kind of made a pivot or kind of took the challenge of the COVID-19 pandemic into your own hands. We want to learn more and hear more about your own personal journeys. So Airelle, I want to start with you. And if you could just share more about your current role, your company, where you're located at, and just tell us a little bit more about how you got to where you are now.
Hi, Ky'Lend. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Airelle Thornhill. I am the owner of Thornhill Media Company, a digital media company that helps boss Black women kind of grow their following online through digital marketing, digital media strategy, things like that. How did I break into the field? So I broke into the field because I went to school for it. I don't know. It was kind of always in me doing digital media, video production, photography. My dad is a muralist in Richmond, Virginia. So I've always grown up seeing art. He has this thing where he says, if you don't see more, you won't dream more. And as a natural storyteller, I truly believe that if you don't see it, you can't believe it. If you don't hear it, you can't think it's even possible. So breaking into the industry, I went to school for media production, and then I did a bunch of different positions in college. I was the live news anchor, as you should know. I was the live news director. I started a television show on campus called The Spill, which was a pop culture show. And then I went on to work at the local television station in Fairfax, Virginia. After working there and trying to figure out what I was going to do next post-graduation, I decided to go ahead and move to Atlanta. Most of the positions in Fairfax are very political, and I am not. And so, sorry about that. So when I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, it was difficult for me to actually get into the field. I wasn't able to really get like a full-time job. So I started my own company. And I would say that's kind of how I broke into the industry. Since starting my company, I've been able to work with many different small businesses as well as a large corporation, the Oprah Winfrey Network. So that was exciting. And yeah.
I'm all here for a name drop. Thank you, Airelle. We're gonna have some more questions for you as well about what initially started you to starting your organization and your business, and just kind of the positions you had in Fairfax that kind of led you to your some of the jobs you had in Atlanta. So thank you. Next up, Joseph, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit more about you and your positions, I should say, that you're currently taking on and kind of the pathway you got to get there.
Yeah, of course, and thank you for having me today. So my name is Josephe Matthews, and I'm currently the Director of Impact and Inclusion at the Memphis Symphony Orchestra, and I also work part-time as the Administrative Coordinator for the Black Orchestral Network, which is a fairly new organization that is dedicated to promoting the voices of Black orchestral musicians. How I got into the field, I grew up playing the violin. I started when I was 10, and I was a violin performance and arts management major in college. Then after college, I did a seminar called Essentials of Orchestra Management. And that seminar was held by the League of American Orchestras, and I ended up working at the League of American Orchestras for a year after that. So I really got to know different orchestra administrators around the country. So next I worked at the San Francisco Symphony for 2 years, and now I'm back home at the Memphis Symphony Orchestra, and that's kind of how I broke into the field.
All right. Thank you, Joseph. Last but certainly not least, Mikiah, if you wouldn't mind telling us, we actually went to high school together, but if you mind telling us a little bit about your current role, your artistry, something that you just released, and kind of the pathway that it took you to get there.
Well, my current role right now, I'm a specialist at the Washington Metropolitan Transit Authority. That's my 9 to 5. And then outside of that, am an artist, a singer, a songwriter. I perform. As Ky'Lend was hinting, I released an album about 2 months ago called Dahlia. So I've just been being an artist, trying to do that on the side. That's about it.
Thank you, Mikiah. I'm actually going to stay with you for a little bit. So you kind of talked about this album. Can you tell us a little bit more about the album and what was your inspiration for releasing it?
Inspiration, I guess, would be just it's a natural calling to write and to sing, and then I wanted to share it with others. The album is R&B album. It's love songs, life experiences. So, yeah.
All right, thank you for sharing that. I know that the pandemic was a lot on everyone, no matter where you were or what was going on in your life. Specifically, it impacted different groups of people, specifically people from underrepresented communities, people who work as essential workers, but it also impacted the arts as well. For a lot of people, they weren't able to do their same art form in the same way because a lot of art form is in person, right? And so that calls for a lot of people to navigate and to pivot or to think of something else to do, whether that was just to make money or whether that was just to something for their own soul and for their own artistry. So I'm just curious, how did the pandemic, specifically when it began, impact your artistic career? I'm going to start with you, Joseph.
Yeah, it had a lot of different ways of impacting me. As a violinist, I often do gigs, so all of that stopped for a while. I had just accepted a job with the Department of Cultural Affairs in New York City, and that went away. As you know, arts funding always is the first to go, and there's problems. And I was an education program coordinator at the San Francisco Symphony, and a lot of my work was in schools, and all of that stopped. I had to pivot a program completely virtual for the first time. So that was actually really interesting because I was working with teaching artists of different age groups, and I ended up coming back to Memphis and working remotely for a while, and I ended up staying in Memphis and never leaving. So that's kind of how the pandemic kind of changed my trajectory.
Curious, when you made the decision to move back to Memphis, what was that like? Like, what came from that? Like, what was, if you could tell us just a little bit about what the process was for you to even make that decision to move back?
Well, I was living with 2 people that I had just met like 2 months ago, and the world was shut down. I was pretty isolated. I was in California, super far away from Memphis. So I really just wanted to get back to my family, really, and just kind of feel a sense of community because, the pandemic was a really trying time for all of us, but just being kind of in a state that I had never lived in before with no family or real friends outside of people I just met around, that kind of was what really drove my decision on that.
Thank you for that. I understand that. I actually moved right before the pandemic as well. It's nothing like moving and then you're supposed to be with them for like 3 months and you can't, like, you really get to know some people. It was a time. Airelle, I'm curious, same question for you. What was the pandemic like for you as a business owner, someone who's starting their business, starting their brand? How did that impact you?
Weirdly enough, I will say that honestly, I think I was very lucky during the pandemic. I was aware that the timing that was going on, we would never have that time again. I knew that if there was any time to leap or jump, this would be the time. So I started the business in 2019, and I did not leave my corporate job, full-time job, until I think August of 2020. So honestly, it was a year, and I didn't leave my full-time job because it's like, oh, I'm making so much money. It was like, now you have the time and the resources and the availability to really put into perfecting this business. So weirdly enough, the pandemic actually helped me. And then I was able to get more business during the pandemic. I do digital media. So the need for what I did just increased times like 1,000. So it was actually very helpful for me.
That's great to hear. And it makes me wonder, for you, as you're like starting your business, and then while everyone else is kind of like myself, I was like, I got furloughed, and I was like, what am I going to do next? Like, especially because the live performing arts in which I was working in at the time was no more. What was I going to do next? But for your business specifically, because it is more digital based, because it is more, and we all went to digital, we all started thinking about how we could do things online, and that's kind of like your bread and butter. How was that for you as your other colleagues or your other friends are like pivoting, where you're saying, wait, this is actually like, this is what I need. This is the lean in. Like, how was that for you? Just curious.
It was actually, I'll say, weird enough, it was affirming because it was like, okay, so even if the entire world shut down, you still can flourish. You still can, do what you love. You can still help people. You can still pay your bills. And at the end of the day, that's all we could really want, right? So that it was affirming. It was also telling of where the world is shifting to, it was like, okay, so hopefully we won't have to deal with anything as bad as COVID again, but in the future, if anything were to happen, we all kind of have a way of still making it through. So it was very eye-opening. It was affirming. For other people, it was, dang, maybe, come on, my team. Let me help you. We'll figure this out. We'll all get this through together.
No, that's good to hear. Mikiah, you're a singer, songwriter. How was the pandemic for you, specifically as it related to like wanting to be, or being, I should say, a singer, being a songwriter, doing gigs? Like, how did the pandemic, how did you navigate it?
Honestly, I was a sitting duck when it happened because there was really nothing I could do. I had released my first album like in 2019, and slowly it started to pick up. And I remember the month that everything had shut down, I was opening at Bethesda Blues and Jazz, and I was like really excited. And then they were like, you can't, because they had this thing where they told us we were only going to be down for like 2 weeks, and it turned out to be 2 years. So that's when I went into the studio and I started making my other album, because I knew I couldn't do the normal routine of performing live and getting gigs and singing at weddings and all of the public things that I would like to do. So I started back in the studio. It also helped me to work on social media, which is where everybody is right now, especially for the arts. So it helped me to focus on that as well.
So it's interesting you say, like, they say we were going to be down for 2 weeks. Me and my friends joke, we say it was 2 weeks to 2 years, the longest 2 weeks of our lives. But I'm curious, while you're in the moment of like just released your first album and then all this happens, how do you channel the creativity? So how, when you're like writing your songs, was that inspiration for any of it? Like, what was the process, your artistic process for that? during the pandemic, I should say?
Life happens throughout the pandemic, and then you find more things to write about. I'll say that. It mainly, I remember really focusing on trying not to catch COVID, and I was grateful enough to have my brother, who's a producer, who's produced all my stuff. We lived with my parents at the time, and we were just down there basically every day. So it really made my artistry stronger, because when you don't have a choice, when you can't leave and go watch other people perform or get into somebody else's business and go feature on a song, like, we were confined to the house. So it definitely helped build my writing, my singing. It helped me hone the craft in the studio and do a lot more than what I would have done in a public studio for maybe paying an hour at a time. I was able to like focus on harmonies, focus on let's try this, let's try that. So yeah, I think it, like Airelle said, was more of a benefit.
I appreciate that. But something you said, the pandemic happens, but also life happens. So in the pandemic in May of 2020, as we all know, George Floyd was killed. And from that, and I would say some other events prior to that, with Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, there was racial awakening, if you will. I'm curious how that impacted you all as artists, as human beings, as individuals who identify as Black. How did that, and Mikiah, I'll go to you first, but like, what was that in the process of, to your point, of navigating all these different things, of not being able to do your gigs, of being able to be in like solitude, and now this is happening, like, how did you navigate that, or what was it like for you?
Well, as far as all of that happening, that impacted my overall personal life. Being an artist, I'm not sure if I don't really, I have incorporated it in my music in the past, but most recently I haven't written about it. But it definitely impacted my personal life. It made me look at the difference between racism and ignorance, more so from a point of view. And I'll say, when I left high school, DC was Black. When I went off to college, and when I came back, it was a little different. So I personally did not experience a lot of interracial activity, because where we went to high school, even, it was a lot of Black kids. It was DC, DMV itself is just a Black area. So to see it all happening on camera and playing out, it really opened my eyes to just pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah, they used to call DC Chocolate City, and now
it's White Chocolate City. We still have, but it's a little mixed.
We can't find a chocolate. Joseph, what was it like for you? I mean, you shared a little bit about all the things you were navigating during the pandemic, but what was that like? What was that like for you? And then I'm interested, how does that then play into your current role at your company?
Yeah, I think one of the big things was, it was a racial awakening. And at first, I think on the front end, it was kind of like a eye-rolling moment for me, because it was kind of like, yeah, welcome to the party. Like, these things have been going on for a long time. And it's just like other people just kind of now started to pay attention and really take stock in what's really going on in society. So it was important for that reason. I feel like a lot of achievements were made in the areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion specifically. So for me, working in orchestras, like, I had to just think about classical music as it is, and how Eurocentric it is, and how whiteness is really centered. I thought, I have a whole degree in violin performance, and I've never played something by a Black composer. And it's like those types of moments really make you think. But currently, my role is the Director of Impact and Inclusion. So I work on education and community engagement initiatives. But as far as inclusion goes, I do EDI workshops with our staff and musicians. I work to kind of change our recruitment policy so we can locate talent that is African-American and Latinx. And I really kind of just work on making our organization just more inclusive and more connected to the community. Just because, Memphis is a 65% Black city. You might go to a Memphis Symphony concert and less than 5% of the audience is Black. So I'm working to kind of like turn that around and kind of change the tide in that way.
No, that's good. And we appreciate you for doing those changes. And your point in regards to orchestra being predominantly white, I know that's something that's said a lot in regards to classical music. and just how that shows up. Yeah, Airelle, I'm gonna come to you in a minute. I want to go back to Mikiah for one quick second, because Mikiah, you're a major, I'm not sure if we said that you went to the Duke Ellington School of the Arts in DC, and you actually majored in vocal music, which I know is more classical, and that was the study of it. How was that, just to your earlier point of like, we went to a school in a city that was predominantly Black. Our high school was predominantly Black, but you're taking up a genre that is predominantly white. How does that, with looking at it from the past, like everything that's happened, how do you reconcile that? Like, what did that mean for you? And I didn't give you this question on the paper, so feel free to take your time to answer it. But I guess my question is, how do you, when you look back, you kind of talked about a little bit and understand, like, we went to a predominantly Black high school in a predominantly Black city, you were studying a genre that's predominantly white, and then all these things happened in 2020, and people are now like having attention towards some of the, what's the word I want to say? Racism, just call it what it is. Some of the racism that happens in the classical form. Like, what are your thoughts about that, I guess is my question.
Well, like I said, when we were at Duke, it didn't feel like that because we had Black vocal teachers that we did do Italian, we did German, but we also did spirituals. And I didn't notice it until I went off to college, because I went to a PWI. And I was like, the whole choir was white. It was two of us, two Black girls. And I was like, okay, this is different. And my vocal teacher, she was a white woman, and it was just, like you said, take my time, because I'm trying to find the wording for it. It opened my eyes for me to realize, okay, what you're doing outside of where you're from, most Black people are not doing this. And that's how it made me feel. And I branched off to study R&B while at the college, because I was like, it was a culture shock for me. So I kind of ran away from it a little bit. But like I said, it's a balance between racism and ignorance. It's not, I don't know if every person is being racist, but there were moments where I just felt like they were ignorant, not really racist. It's kind of like an innocence to it. But yeah.
No, thank you for that. Airelle, we went to college together, another predominantly white institution. So I'm curious, during the pandemic, we saw the racial awakening. How did that impact your artistry? Just because I know you personally, I know that you've always been someone who has been aware of what was going on in regards to race, but also in regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion in its entirety. So I'm curious, A, how that impacted you personally, the racial awakening in 2020, but also how that impacted the way that you conduct business and how you do run your business.
Yes. So I call it George Floyd era, because I feel like when that happened, on the inside, as a little Black girl, I was broken. I feel like I'm a visual learner, and I feel like visuals are the biggest teacher. And to see what was happening unfold right in front of us on our screens, it spoke volumes. It told me as a little Black girl that I can be asleep in my bed and be shot, and it can just happen. You know, Breonna Taylor. I don't know if you recall, Ky'Lend, when I was in college, the incident that happened with the police coming up in my house and everything. Again, this is a racial thing. They're thinking, you know, I live with 4 Caucasian women, and I'm the only Black person, so I had to be the person. You know, it changed everything for me, because it sent a message to me that there was no value to my life, that I could just be thrown out of the police car. I don't know if you guys saw in Atlanta specifically, there was an incident and they were protesting, and a young Black man and his girlfriend were trying to drive away from the scene, and they're both pulled out of their car and tased and everything. And I'm like, that could have been my fiance and I. It has happened to us. We were not, filmed, but it felt like it happened to me. So to turn around the next day and to still be working at my corporate job where I'm the only Black woman there, and my spirit is mourning these people who we watched pass away or be disrespected on television, and they're just happy-go-lucky, like nothing's wrong, and my community is hurting. I had to do something. It inspired my storytelling. It inspired how I do projects now. I feel like every project I go into is a story waiting to be told. And so I take it, it's a higher regard in my book now. I see it as a duty and a responsibility to shed light on a real Black story, not just the good, but also the not so good.
No, I think that that's great. And I know that you also in 2020 worked with the Oprah Winfrey Network in the social platform of Own Your Vote social media campaign. If you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about that, because the election was also something that happened in 2020 during the pandemic, during the racial awakening. So I'm pretty sure that even like being a part of that was also challenging, but also a part of like a cause and effect of everything that had happened up until that point, and people reclaiming their voices. And they did that by going to the polls. And some can say they did that yesterday by going to the polls as well. So if you mind just sharing a little bit about that project that you worked on as well.
Yes. So I had, as a Black woman, that was probably the first time where I felt like my voice actually said something. It meant something, that's one. And two, it was extremely taxing. I've never actually worked in the political space before. It was my first time. And I was like an account manager. So I did a lot of the posting for our activations and things. And it's taxing. It's a taxing job. I encourage it. I think we all should vote and get to the polls. But I had to definitely protect my mental health with that one, because I don't know if there's enough case studies yet to show how social media, being on it and working in it, can affect your mental health. But that was probably the first like meltdown I had as a business owner because it was just a lot. It was. Also, there's a time difference. OWN is in California. I'm in Atlanta. So big time difference for me. But overall, I was thankful to have a voice in that space.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It brings me a little bit to Joseph. I know you talked about at the beginning being working with the Black Orchestra Network. If you don't mind just talking a little bit about that and kind of how that organization or network kind of came to be.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you say that, because I think it was just right around the time of the racial awakening when this group of 7 to 9 individuals, like some of them left, but it was like 7 to 9 individuals that got together and decided that they were going to do this because they wanted to kind of change the narrative and kind of empower Black orchestral musicians across the field and provide them with lots of resources. So I joined exactly a year ago as the administrative coordinator. They got some funding from the Mellon Foundation. And we launched officially in May with an open letter to the field and, calling out orchestras for the iniquities that they, have lived with for a long time, and writing a call to action with all these action steps about what orchestras can do to make themselves more inclusive and more welcoming to Black musicians and kind of facilitate a better environment. And that's kind of where we are right now.
No, that's great. I think that just shows how much 2020 has been such a pivotal moment in everyone's lives, from professional to personal as well. To Mikiah's earlier point, though, life still happens. So I'm curious from each of you, as we go into this recession, as things shift and change, especially with being in the arts, what are some tools and skills that you have? You all kind of talked about them, but I want to make sure we give a moment to kind of really debrief them. What are the tools and skills that you have learned by going through a time of uncertainty, especially with being a part in the arts, knowing that it can shift and change today and tomorrow. Airelle, I mean, you're a business owner, and so you are an entrepreneur, knowing that you don't have a 9 to 5, no corporation is backing the work that you're doing. What are the skills and tools that you've developed just to maintain?
There we go. To maintain, I've had to learn how to stop, how to pause, how to take a break. I really didn't know how to do that. Life did not prepare me to slow down. It always was telling me to keep going, push through, learn to take a break, learning how to prioritize, because that's huge. And then I would even say, as far as like skill set wise, I had to learn how to, where was it? I literally wrote it down. For skill sets, I was saying that you need to know how to kind of do project management, how to disseminate your work, how to kind of organize it. I feel like in creativity, or in creative fields in general, we always focus on how to do, but we don't focus on how to manage. So that's one thing that I definitely had to learn to do, is not only manage my work, but manage myself. So yeah.
No, that's a good point in regards to managing yourself, because we are also brands as well, and so how do we come into the work? Mikiah, you're also kind of like an entrepreneur as well. I mean, you said at the beginning you have a 9 to 5, but you're also a singer, a songwriter. I know that you just went on tour, or you're going on tour. So I'm curious about, what are some of the skills that you have, or just like tools that you have had to kind of have in your back pocket as you navigate the balancing act of having a 9 to 5, but also this act of going and doing your own artistry as well?
Well, first, I'm going to definitely say, I'm going to piggyback on Airelle with that. You have to have a schedule, and you have to know when to take a break. That's first, because you'll tire yourself out when you're an entrepreneur. You have opportunities coming at you left and right, and you'll just keep on accepting them. The other thing is, hold on, I lost my train of thought. I should have wrote my stuff down like you. Yeah, so one, to do that, it's so important. Follow the desires of your heart directly. Do not go off on a tangent and do anything other than what you have set your heart to do, because there are also going to be other opportunities that open up. Hey, you want to be on a reality show? Of course I do, but I actually would like to sing. So even if I am singing at small events and weddings and funerals for the rest of my life, that is what I would rather do than to get caught up doing something else. Because when you're an entrepreneur, there are always opportunities coming. So follow the desire of your heart and stay focused, and pay attention to when resources are opening up for you, resources that you need and you don't know where it's going to come from, and out of nowhere it comes. That lets you know that you're on the right path. So those two things are key.
What about you, Joseph? I know you're navigating many different organizations, many different networks. What are some of the skills or resources and tools that you've had to kind of maneuver up to just keep going?
Well, I'll definitely piggyback off what both my colleagues were saying, because I definitely was going to say manage your time. I feel like, time is like money. You don't really have a plan for it, you will spend it, and you won't have anything to show for it. So I definitely feel like, managing your time is something that I definitely had to learn to do, because we had so much extra time. You were at home. But in that extra time, what I learned to do was I learned to network, and I picked up like a part-time job. I was working with like this consulting group that did racial equity in the arts work. So I kind of picked up this like diversity, equity, inclusion thing, and that's kind of how I ended up working at the Black Orchestra Network. So I actually did start to make better use of my time once I started to realize that I needed to buckle down. And also, still piggybacking, I would say put yourself first and follow your passions. I feel like, the pandemic shook up a lot of things for people, and organizations definitely put themselves first. So I feel like we should do the same.
That's true. Facts are facts. As I told my job, I had to leave early for this panel. Airelle, speaking of putting yourself first, you made the decision to start your own business, Thornhill Media Company. You talked a little bit about it at the beginning, but I want to know, what was the moment where you said, you know what, I'm going to start this company, and just kind of walk us through what that was and what the process is, and tell us a little bit more about the company and some of the success you've had thus far.
Yes. So I started the company because honestly, I was creating so much and I didn't have anything to show for it. You know, I would partner with other people, I would cover events and host things, and all I had at the end to show was like some pictures and an experience. But I wanted my company to be able to grow. I wanted the productions that I did to be able to grow. And I knew that I would want to tell longer Black stories, like documentary style. So I literally just started like an Instagram page, and it was first to just house all of my creative adventures in Atlanta. But then I literally helped my therapist with her social media one day, and she put my name in a Facebook group. And when I tell you that was like when I first started my company, and last weekend, my client from that Facebook group, my longest client, just flew me out to Chicago to do like a content session with her. She invited me to her millionaire party, and it was amazing. And so just to think that, you know, you do one creative thing, it stems another creative thing, it stems another creative thing, and then you look up and you're like, wow, I'm living my dreams. So actually, I would go back and say that, to piggyback off of what my colleagues said, they said, you know, you have to definitely stay true to yourself. I would also say be open to receive. I think you touched on that. Be open to receive. And even if it's not what you saw yourself doing, that passion in you may still be completed in a different space. Like, I'm very spiritual, so I'm like, God has a plan, and he's going to make sure that you get there, and just keep listening to that inner voice. And also, whatever career that you choose, I feel like I wish I had knew this when I was younger. I feel like whatever career that you choose to dedicate your life to is not about the financial gain, but it's more about like the gifts that you can contribute to the world. Like, what gift do you have inside of you that can help someone else get to their dream?
That's great. And speaking of helping someone else get to their dream, Mikiah, I know that you also provide vocal lessons for singers of all ages. Can you tell us a little bit about that process of being a vocal coach?
Yes, I used to do it a lot before my 9 to 5, and now I do it every once in a while, mainly with adults. That process is adorable. It's so much fun. It reminds me of when I was in high school and in middle school. Everyone that comes in, especially the adults, they're very scared. And I'm like, why are you so nervous? And they want to achieve this huge level of success with the lessons. They want to take it and be great. So I'm saying, if you put in the work, you're definitely gonna come out. But I always tell the students, you have to be willing to do the things that are hard to do. This is boring, especially the little kids. They want to sing, but they don't want to do the lessons. The adults too. You have to be willing to do the things that are boring, that hurt. It's always time to do them when you're tired, after work, before work. So you have to definitely put in that rough work.
Thank you, Mikiah. Joseph, I'm curious. I know that we talked about this a little bit at the beginning as well in regards to the classical field. A lot of it's predominantly white, but I actually first saw you because you went viral on Facebook. So I'm curious, what has that experience been for you in regards to working in a field that is predominantly white? You talked about the changes, but I'm curious, when you were growing up, what was that like for you, being one of the few people of color in that space?
I feel like it definitely can be really isolating at times, but I feel like what kept me there has been my passion for music. So what I've tried to turn that into as a professional is making sure there's space for both. So I like to, diversify the genres that classical organizations, perform, and then diversify the audiences as well. So I think, it's definitely an uphill battle. You have to deal with certain personalities, and there's lots of politics involved, and there's money involved. Boards, they tend to be predominantly white as well. So that kind of explains the reasoning for a lot of all white programming, just because they're pandering to boards who have money. So there's definitely an uphill battle, but it's something I'm very passionate about. So I'm here for the fight.
No, that makes sense. And a lot of systemic issues are there. And then how do we disrupt the systemic issues while also making sure that we're also making a change? I have a colleague of mine that says, any little bit of change is still change. And so we have to be appreciative of that while still trying to make sure that we're getting to the root of it. Sometimes it's okay if a leaf falls off, as long as we're still with the goal of getting to sometimes okay if a leaf falls off, as long as we're okay with getting to the root. So I think that statement you just said makes complete sense, and it just shows like we are on an uphill battle, but it's uphill. One of the last questions I want to ask you all is that if you had to summarize in one sentence what your artist statement would be, what is it? I'm going to start with Airelle.
Okay, I've already said it, but every project is just another story, just waiting to be told.
All right, I'm going to level up with you. What is your story?
I'm sorry?
Your story. At this moment in your life, what is your story? What is the title of your book? What is the title of the chapter right now? I can come back to you.
I would get copyrighted because Michelle already took Becoming, right? She took that.
She took that.
Yeah. So I couldn't do that one. I'm coming. No, that's not good. Come back to me. I will figure it out.
Mikiah, what would your artist statement be?
This was the hardest question, and I was waiting for other people to answer so that I can think like, where are we going with this? But I'm definitely gonna say, I'm gonna piggyback off of what I said, follow the desires of your heart in order to stay alive. How about that?
Love that. What about you?
Mine will be, as an artist and an arts administrator, my mission is to harness the power of the arts to connect, inspire, and empower diverse communities.
Okay. Like that tagline.
Okay, back to me.
Back to you.
Okay. So the title of the book. Okay, can we say evolution? Because I feel like I got to a space in like the content creation space where it's like, okay, you've done it, you like it, but what's next? What are we going to do next? So always constantly being open to change, always being a constant student, always looking to level up in some type of way. So evolving, evolution.
I love it. Speaking of evolving, evolution, leveling up, I'm curious, what is next for you with your business? What is something that you're looking forward to in the future?
I would love to continue to tell Black stories. I do a lot of branding and like photo shoot direction and coming up with the outfits and the looks and the staging of everything. So to me, it just makes sense to have my own content creation studio. What do you think? Yeah, keep the coins in the buckets, So actually, I do work part-time at the Boys and Girls Club here in Atlanta, and I was able to work with the kids and teach them like graphic design and t-shirt printing. My fiance does that, and one of the things that I would like to do with the content creation studio is have the kids come in on Saturday so I can do my own Saturday Academy to teach them how to create content, because in my opinion, this thing keeps falling. In my opinion, we always need to be pouring into, our future generation, because when I'm old and it's time to tell my story, I'm gonna need somebody to direct it too, right?
Yeah. I'm curious though, you said you want to tell Black stories. What is one Black story? I know there may be multiple that you want to tell. What is one specifically that you're like, I want to tell that story?
I've always had this thing where I love the Wayans brothers, and I think the fact that they're each so individually talented, I would love to do a documentary on them. I would love to do a documentary on my father. I would love to do a documentary on my grandfather.
Tell us about your father. Tell us about your father.
My father is a muralist in Richmond, Virginia. He is part of the reason I'm so creative because he paints Black historians. So he did the Arthur Ashe Tunnel in Richmond, Virginia. He did the first Black firefighters mural in Richmond, Virginia. He did Maggie Walker. He's done a bunch of different things. Right now, he's currently painting on his old elementary school in Jackson Ward. And just a little background on that, it is an underserved area. My father himself didn't even graduate from high school, yet here he is at 67 years old. Don't tell him I said his age. Here he is just kind of still going. I got to slow him down. And I'm like, you keep me inspired. You keep me wanting to go. So yeah, I would love to tell his story because it's inspiring as well.
No, thanks for that. And it just shows that it's in the bloodline, right?
Oh my goodness. My niece sings for Sunday service. I know Kanye's in the fire right now, but they're still talented. My sister is a hairstylist. My brother does cartoon design. Fiance does graphic design, and he makes music too. Like my whole family, we're all talented in the blood.
It makes sense why you want to do a documentary on the Wayans brothers, though, because they are like a talented family. You come from a talented family. I'm here. See, I'm going to be one of the donors. I got you. I'll be a producer.
I mean, Ty, we have to have you on the team. What are you talking about?
I'm there. Joseph, what about you? What's next for you? Knowing that you're navigating a lot of different organizations and also your own artistry as an artist and as an arts administrator, what's next?
Yeah, I think what's next for me is making steps to kind of really disrupt the power dynamics in classical music. So I'm really looking at relocating to a larger city, at a more larger and more influential arts organization, and really just making strides to set an example in the field. So making everything that's about diversity not like a one-off, not a community engagement concert, like really changing like the strategic plan and really changing organizations internally so they can serve communities externally.
That's great. Curious, in a perfect world, what would that city be? What would that organization look like?
It would be New York City, and it would be at Carnegie Hall or the Juilliard School. So let's talk in a few weeks.
Okay, it's cold here in New York currently, but yeah. No, that sounds great. Mikiah, what about you? What's next?
Definitely to keep making music and expanding worldwide, of course, so that I can really make an impact and make a difference in my family and my community, because now I'm seeing the issue is resources. And the more resources that you have, the further you can get, the faster you can get. And I think I've seen it in my family, I've seen it in my community, I've seen it within my friends. Resources is something that we struggle with for a Zoom for another day. So I definitely want to be the person that helps.
No, that sounds great. And speaking of what's next, can you tell people about how they can find your music, where they can, like if they want to download?
Yeah, you can find me on all streaming platforms under my name, Mikiah, Mikiah. And the title of my album is called Dahlia Like the Flower. YouTube as well. No, that's not really a streaming platform, but yeah. And social medias, I'm under the same name, Mikiah 2_.
Sounds good. Joseph, how can people connect with you if they want to learn more about the organizations you're a part of, or just to learn more about your art form?
LinkedIn, Josephe Matthews, and I have an Instagram where I play violin. It's called Dope Violin. That's really easy to find me there.
Sounds good. Airelle's taking notes. She's about to find you all. Airelle, if people want to find you, they want to learn more about you, more about your business, where can they go to?
Yes, so you guys can follow me. My personal Instagram is That's So Airy. And that's AIREE, That's So Airy. And then my business Instagram is Thornhill Media Company, and you'll find that from my personal page.
All right. Thank you all so much. One last question before we wrap up. You all have given a lot of great resources, a lot of great tools, specifically for the next generation. You all have shared with the audience and myself about how you all navigated a time of uncertainty. If you could add one sentence, one word for the next generation who is wanting to be in your shoes, who are wanting to do what you do, who are wanting to be a part of or collaborate with you? What would that sentence or what would that word be? I know we had follow your dreams, stay true to yourself, but what is one other word or one other statement you could give to them? And if that's kind of hard, what is one thing that you wish you could tell yourself 2 years ago or right before the pandemic hit? And I'll give you a moment to think about that as well. But like, what is one word, one sentence that you could either share with someone else who wants to be in your shoes? Or what is one thing, one word, one sentence that you would tell yourself 2 years ago, March 1st, 2020?
I can start with this one. I would say to myself, I would say, you got to go get it. Just a little mantra. And then I would say to other people to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because the moment you're comfortable, that's when you start to slack. You have to constantly be going after something, to chasing something, evolving, growing. And that's either inner or business. I think that's something that I got confused myself when I first became a business owner, is I constantly want to do business, content, but practice those soft skills too, because that'll be the difference between you keeping a client and not, you getting the project and not, you having that customer service and not. It's huge when it comes to business.
No, thank you for that. Joseph?
Yeah, I have a phrase and a word. They're kind of related. The phrase I would say is blaze the trail. And if you ask how you get there, the word is to innovate.
All right, Mikiah?
That came around very fast. I'm big on the same thing. I know I keep saying follow the desires of your heart, but definitely, like Airelle said, spiritual. Use your spiritual ears, mind of discernment, and definitely focus on what you desire to do. It's supposed to be a saying, but it's a lecture. Focus on what you desire to do and pay attention to when resources are opening to you, even when you don't know where they are coming from. To me, it's a sure sign that you are on the straight path of doing what you feel like you desire to do.
No, that's great. And on that note, I want to thank you, Mikiah. I want to thank you, Joseph. I want to thank you, Airelle, for being a part of this panel discussion. You all shared a lot of great tools, a lot of resources in regards to how you navigated an uncertain time in your life, specifically throughout the pandemic. But it also showed how each of you were destined to be where you are. And because of that moment in 2020, it just shows like how you all have become greater from that, from the many different opportunities you've had thus far. So we want to thank our panelists. We want to thank our audience for joining us today for Unplugged, pivoting after the pandemic. We want to thank CAAPA for producing and organizing this entire panel discussion. Thank you, Mr. Dell. Thank you, Ms. Cherry. We will be back with you in March. Until next time, thank you all so much. Have a great evening.
I would like to say thank you to our moderator, the panelist, executive director, and chairperson for providing such a rich and open dialogue. The panelists have truly provoked great thought and hopefully further conversation. I'd like to also offer a special thanks to all of our viewers for sharing in this moment. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.